Good day. Apogee was positively legendary in the early 90s. Numerous innovative and legendary games would be released under its banner. And today, we're taking a look at one such relic, Crystal Caves. This was one of my childhood games, and the first game I ever played on my own personal computer. It was a game that stuck in my mind for over a decade, and was one of the first games that I played on the then new DOSBox emulator. Never in a million years would I have ever imagined that this game, of all early 90s games, had a fan base so dedicated that it would actually get remade for modern systems. Today, we're taking a look at the 2020 remake of Crystal Caves by Ember Heart Games. I first learned of this game by the legendary Lazy Game Reviews, and snapped it up, and promptly gave up on it after a couple of screens. A few months later, I got contacted by the devs of this game, offering me a review copy, which, hilariously enough, I had to decline since I already had it. So since I felt honored by such an offer, I decided to dig deep into the game and give it the full retrospective treatment. So what we have here is a remake of the highest order. For one, you don't have to use DOSBox, and for another, you can run this in more than 640 by 480. The remake lets you play the game in all the modern screen resolutions and looks excellent in 2K. It features controller support, and for those of us who have to type all bloody day, this is a boon from the mighty Omnissiah. The game plays well with a controller, with everything mapped sensibly, and it is very responsive. I had zero crashes to desktop, and the remake fixes a few minor issues, but keeps the game true to what it was, and as such is the definitive way to play Crystal Caves in 2021. So this was one of those games that in the 90s I thought I liked. However, upon reflection, this is one of those games that I never really played. This is a game I kind of went into as a kid, messed around in it, died a bunch of times, gave up, moved on. This is a game that, as an adult, I played around in it for about 5 minutes, couldn't figure out how to actually progress, and gave up and moved on. For this review, I finally put nose to grindstone and tried to figure out how to actually play the bloody thing. When I first tried to play this game, I played it like it was a side-scrolling action game. That would be wrong. This is not a side-scrolling action game in any way, shape, or form. You might think it is. I mean, you're jumping from platforms, you got a gun, but that's not how you're supposed to play this. This is a puzzle platformer, and once you realize that and fix the window after you threw the controller out of it, the game gets pretty fun. You have 4 episodes to choose from, the 3 original ones and a 4th added by the remake. The game also includes a level editor for prime geekiness. Trust me, lads and lasses, when I say that unless you have a 55-gallon drum of balls guana on tap, you will get through at most 2 of the episodes. 3 and 4 are bloody impossible. So when you start the game, you select a map and enter a world of pain. Your objective is the same no matter which episode you play. Collect all the crystals from the caves. You collect crystals from the caves to buy fuel and tip the strippers at the Galactic Trading Post. Okay, I might have made one of those up. You have to collect all the crystals to exit each level, and that seems simple enough. But the levels are designed in such a way that even Miyazaki would say that they are cruel. So, as said earlier, this is a puzzle platformer. A hard puzzle platformer. And you know it's hard because when you go into the menu, you have a restart option. Oh dear, you can quite easily make a level unwinnable and thus have to restart. This looks like a quick and easy game to get footage for, but I have 4 hours of footage and I didn't even beat the bloody thing. RPGs have taken me less time. It's that rock hard. And what makes it rock hard are the sheer number of creative hazards and level designs. You play hapless Terry Pratchett-inspired protagonist, Milo. He has the ability to jump and the ability to shoot his gyrojet pistol. You have very limited ammo, and you have to use that ammo wisely as it will help you solve each of the levels. Now this game does feature very responsive controls, and if they were not this responsive, this game would be absolutely rage-inducing. As in, even the AVGN would need about a 55-gallon drum of rolling rock to finish even the first bloody level. With your jumping and shooting, you will be able to avoid and shoot enemies, and sometimes jumping away will be better than shooting, as, yes, a corpse is left on the screen, and yes, it can hurt you, and you have 3 hearts, and that's it. Some enemies are impervious to damage, and some can be killed with power-ups. Then you have the stage hazards, with some of those being insta-deaths. There are stages with reverse gravity, those are always fun, and then you have the hate spike hentai enemy that gets rammed up hard if you're not paying attention. There will be many times in levels where it will look impossible, only for you to realize that you have to blast a cartoon stop sign that you might think is part of the background to progress. I almost took a hammer to control after I figured that one out. So what you have is a game where each level should take a couple of minutes at most to complete, if you know what you're doing. But until you know what you're doing, you're going to be dying all the time until you figure out what to do and when to do it in order to stay alive. The gameplay for Crystal Caves is by far the worst kind of rock hard. It's fun, at least until episode 3. It's hard, but you feel smart after you defeat a level, and thus you keep ramming your sweet head straight into that wall until you finally win, and despite all my rage, you're really not a rat in a cage, in this instance at least. The game is very fair, especially when compared to other games of this time period. There are some puzzle platformers that killed you if you fell down too far, and there are others with, shall we say, rather limited color palettes and level objectives that get boring fast. Crystal Caves here gives you hard puzzles to solve, but for the most part they don't get too repetitive, and so while you have a lot of levels to play through, there is a good chance your interest will maintain until either you beat it or it beats you. Graphics for the game are pure pixelated goodness. It's one of those games that was supposed to look cartoony and thus went from contemporary in the 90s to what people would expect retro games to look like these days. Milo here is well detailed with his little miner's hat. The levels have great backgrounds and the enemies have some good animation to them, and the minecart enemy even has gold fall out of it. Why is it alive? Space magic, I guess. Also, these snakes look a little bit like Arbok from Pokemon, a bit too much like it. Nintendo Steel's confirmed. For such a simple little game, Crystal Caves has really stood the test of time. Originally, the game only used the PC speaker, which meant very simplistic sounds and no music. The remake has all those simplistic sounds intact. The remake adds an NES-style soundtrack that was not present in the original DOS release. This NES soundtrack is quite good and turns me, well, you get the meme. There are a limited number of tracks, and they are all loops, but some are pretty rockin' and make the game that much better. The story here is told in simplistic cutscenes at the beginning and end of each episode. The plotline for Milo is that he is always down on his luck, and thus he always needs more crystal. The writing and character and universe are all inspired by the comedic writings of Terry Pratchett. Your first episode, which was the shareware episode in the 90s, is Trouble with the Tribbles, a nod to the famous TOS episode. Milo goes to the Altair system to mine some crystals to get enough money for a down payment on a Twibble farm. The first episode might seem hard, it might seem impossible, but you ain't seen nothing yet. My advice here is to pay attention to like everything when you first enter a stage and formulate a plan, because if you just run in, you will die every time. The first episode really is your trial by fire, as you have to know how to play the game to make any progress at all. Even the first level will kill you over and over again until you master how to control Milo and find the optimal way to complete each stage. Don't give up, as every level has a solution. And surprise, Super Mario 2 US reference! Episode 2 has Milo selling the Tribble farm at a loss due to changing markets, and thus he heads back to the Crystal Caves for more dosh. The crystals have a different shape now, and the levels are even harder, most of the time at least. Some levels will be easier than others, so you might breeze through one and then spend half an hour on another. As you would expect, Milo's business fails, and so he heads back and, oh my god, he's gone mad! Milo becomes a genocidal maniac and blows up the planet that keeps getting in his way, Grand Moff Tarkin style. So Murdering Milo heads back to the Crystal Caves a third time after killing billions of people to get money for a new venture. Real estate. Seems legit. I never could finish this episode as I got stumped on one too many maps. My prediction is at the end of this episode, Milo gets burned alive for killing billions of people. Episode 4. Well, the mass murdering psychopath that is Milo has struck it big with a chain of burger joints called Chairman Mao's Magic Wok. I hate it. While on vacation, one of the victims of his genocidal rampage from the previous episode sabotages the cruise liner he's on, and thus Murdering Milo is lost in space. But as you would expect, he makes it to some more Crystal Caves to dig up more blood money. So, episode 4. It's impossible. Moving on. Crystal Caves is a 90s game that has more than stood up to the test of time that all games must face, and like Captain Kirk, it keeps passing it. The art style allows this ancient game to look pleasantly retro. The controls are tight and responsive, so it's fun to play, and the levels are true head-scratchers, so even pro MLGs will enjoy it. The remake fixes all that needed fixing, and even gives us some sweet tunes to boot. All told, Crystal Caves, while not an Alpha Prime game due to its extreme difficulty, is still a damn fine game that I cannot recommend enough. And so, I am GeneralLotz, wishing you a good Halloween Harry and good Duke Nukem 2, or whatever makes you happy. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.